Washington, Joseph R. Biden Jr. was sworn in Wednesday as the nation's 46th president in an inauguration ceremony like no other, sparsely attended due to the deadly pandemic, ringed by National Guard troops following riots at the U.S. Capitol, and snubbed by the departing president, Donald J. Trum. Kamala Harris was sworn in minutes before Biden as the nation's 49th vice president, becoming the first woman, first black person and first Asian person to serve as the second most powerful person in the government. The ceremony went off without a hitch, but there were plenty of key takeaways from the historic moment. Sworn in at 11:48 EST, Biden repeated the theme he campaigned on: America needs to unify after 4 divisive years of Donald Trump. The new president never mentioned his successor by name in his 21-minute address, but he called for an end to political rancor in favor of a return to policy debates that are passionate but not nasty. "I will be a president for all Americans, he said. Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war." More, Joe Biden ran on bringing back normalcy. With COVID-19, riots and a looming impeachment trial, the task just got tougher. "I know speaking of unity can sound like a foolish fantasy these days. I know the forces that divide us are deep and are real," Biden continued. "But I also know they are not new." Biden said the country will need to come together if it wants to tackle its biggest challenges, notably a pandemic that has killed more than 400,000 Americans and infected millions more. "My fellow Americans, in the work ahead of us, we're going to need each other," Biden said. "We must finally meet this pandemic as one nation. We will get through this together. Kamala Harris made history when she took the oath of office Wednesday, becoming the first woman of color to serve as vice president and breaking gender and racial barriers with her role as Biden's No. 2. The daughter of an Indian mother and a Jamaican father, Harris' ascension to vice president is being celebrated by Indian Americans and African Americans across the country. Harris was sworn in at 11:41 a.m. by Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, the first Latina member of the High Court. "Today we mark the swearing-in of the first woman in American history elected to national office," Biden said in his inaugural speech. "Don't tell me things can't change." For the first time in more than 150 years, the departing president chose not to endorse the peaceful transition of power by attending the inauguration of his successor. Trump's decision to skip the ceremony was no surprise. A president who for 4 years shattered presidential norms, Trump has for weeks called Biden's win illegitimate, spreading false claims of election fraud. And he was impeached by the House earlier this month for inciting a violent mob of supporters to storm their Capitol building in an effort to disrupt Congress' recognition of his opponent's win. Instead, Trump left the White House hours before the inauguration and headed to his Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida. "We will be back in some form," Trump told supporters during a farewell ceremony at Joint Base Andrews that featured a 21-gun salute and a military band playing "Hail to the Chief." Trump did hew to one tradition: he left a letter for Biden, just as Barack Obama left one for him and other past presidents did for their successors. His spokesman declined to disclose Trump's parting message to Biden. A bevy of Republicans who worked feverishly to undermine Biden's win and objected to the Electoral College count on January 6 attended the inauguration, including several leaders of that effort to block the November 3 election results. Senator Josh Hawley, the first Senate Republican to say he would object to the Electoral College count, attended, along with Senator Ted Cruz, Texas, who quickly followed Hawley's lead. Cruz was wearing a mask that read, "Come and take it," with a cannon and a star. Among House Republicans, Representative Jim Jordan, Ohio, told reporters Wednesday he wanted to be part of the pageantry even though he repeatedly touted false claims leading up to the inauguration that Biden's win was not legitimate. He argued that key swing states unilaterally changed voting rules to favor Democrats. "This is as close to pageantry as we get in American," Jordan said before Biden took the oath of office. "This and the State of the Union address, and I just think it's important that you attend those events." Amidst the pomp and pageantry, one particular guest stole the show: Amanda Gorman, the youngest inaugural poet in U.S. history. Gorman, who is 22 years old and the daughter of a Los Angeles school teacher, wowed spectators and set Twitter alight with her reading of an original poem titled The Hill We Climb. More, Amanda Gorman, the youngest inaugural poet in U.S. history, calls for unity on Inauguration Day. We've seen the force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, she said, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. There is always light if we are brave enough to see it. There is always light if we are brave enough to be it, she said. Gorman's reading caps a star-studded roster of performers, including Lady Gaga singing the national anthem, Jennifer Lopez belting out This Land Is Your Land, and Garth Brooks performing Amazing Grace. The nation's capital was on edge in the days leading up to Biden's inauguration, a city still rattled by the January 6 violence and gripped by fear of another attack on the seat of American democracy. But the ceremony unfolded without any hitches or hiccups. Biden even took the oath of office from Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts a few minutes before the 12 p.m. time set out in the U.S. Constitution. The smooth, peaceful transfer of power took place in no small part to the approximately 20,000-plus National Guard troops stationed in and around the Capitol. The heavy police and military presence transformed the ceremony, usually a solemn but celebratory event, into an eerie, locked-down affair. 2 weeks ago, when an angry, violent mob staged an insurrection and desecrated this temple of our democracy, it awakened us to our responsibilities as Americans, said Senator Amy Klobuchar, a Minnesota Democrat and one of 2 senators charged with planning the inaugural ceremony. This is the day when our democracy picks itself up, brushes off the dust and does what America always does, goes forward as a nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.